One of the topics tomorrow night will be immigration, which has, of course, been a real hot-button issue. Although mostly focused on illegal immigration, still, more and more Americans are fretting over the fact that even legal immigrants are taking jobs that native-born could and should have. Currently, 43.6 million immigrants live in the United States. That's almost 14% of the population. And there's new research that really underscores the growing impact of immigrants in this country. Nearly 65 million U.S. residents speak a foreign language at home. That's up 180% since 1980, and it's a huge development that represents an enormous test for this nation. Maybe that's why certain red states are now purple states, possibly on the verge of turning blue. Joining me now, Ryan Girdusky, Hadley, Heath, Manning, and Charlie Kirk. Charlie, I'll start with you on this. Those states I was referring to, I think Nevada, North Carolina, Florida, and another one. It's really interesting. Because I think there is evidence out there that these immigrants, particularly those who don't speak English, tend to vote Democratic.
That's right. You know, it's interesting. In the first two debates, this has really not been an issue that has been discussed very much. And look, Hillary Clinton has some of the best political advisors and pollsters around. I would venture a guess that they actually don't want her to talk about it. You know, she is for open borders. She is for very, very weak immigration stances. You know, Hillary Clinton is going to talk about exactly what her pollsters say is going to move the dial for her. So that should be an indication to Trump that if she hasn't brought it up in the first two debates, this is something he should really focus and target on. It's right what you're saying about the demographic trends. However, this is an issue that cuts across party lines with people that they feel they're losing their country. They see English is diminishing as the primary language in this country. And so I think it's something that Trump might be able to pick up some moderate, traditional Reagan Democrat voters on into the debate tomorrow.
Ryan, what do you make of it? Because I got to tell you, like in New Jersey, in the construction business, there are so many people from Brazil and other countries. They do a great job. They do it for less money. And it's like people are in a catch-22.
Well, my grandfather used to be a cab driver. I've never met an American cab driver in New York City in the 29 years I've lived here, and I mean, almost ever. And I think that you see a lot of anxiety, especially with declining wages, especially in areas where immigrants are going into low-skilled jobs. If you look at where mechanization is happening and where immigrants are coming from and the jobs they're taking, it's the same thing. Trump has spoken exactly to those anxieties that those people have, and I think that's why he tried to do outreach to all segments, regardless of race, of low-skilled workers. Hasn't exactly panned out the way he hoped, but nonetheless, and yet still, it is important because Hillary's immigration plan is going to absolutely decimate the incomes of low-skilled Americans.
Hadley, on the other end of this, in Silicon Valley, more than 50% of all the new businesses are started by immigrants. Of course, the Nobel Prize winners out of 7, 6 were immigrants. Ryan made the point, of course, that they weren't from Syria during break. But the point is there a point, particularly with legal immigration, that you have to tread more carefully than when the conversation is about illegal immigrants?
Yes, and certainly politically, Trump ought to tread very carefully here because, as you mentioned, we do have a lot of voters in the United States who recognize that immigration is a part of their background, even recently in the United States. So discussing immigration is, on the one hand, yes, it touches on a variety of issues, economic issues, our debt and entitlements, our health care system, how to manage a growing population, especially when most of our population growth is coming from immigration. On the other hand, we ought to recognize and celebrate that the diversity of our population and the assets that immigration brings in terms of boosting our labor force and innovations in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, those are positive things. And so walking that very careful line, discussing immigration reform as something that works for all Americans, immigrants and native-born Americans alike, that's something that Mr. Trump ought to try to do in the next debate and bring a sense of common sense to this debate.
By the same token, though, Charlie, there are a lot of people out there who listen, we talk about Brexit all the time. I know Brexit was focused on illegals, Muslims and North Africans, but I really believe the crux of that was when they allowed 10 countries, mostly Eastern European, to come in, and they took a lot of jobs. They took the plumbing jobs. They took a lot of jobs that native, folks in the UK had all the time. So there is a sort of resentment. Maybe it's not popular or politically correct to say it out loud, but isn't there a certain resentment there?
Most definitely. And look, I think Trump has tapped into that to a great extent. and that explains his success in eastern Ohio. That explains why Hillary Clinton's not campaigning in Iowa anymore, why Trump's probably going to win Iowa. And look, there's a lot to be said with Trump's immigration policy in energizing the base but also dividing first-time immigrants. But I would point out that Trump is not necessarily anti-immigrant. He's anti-illegal immigration. Trump married an immigrant. You know, Donald Trump's kids of course, their mother being an immigrant. Donald Trump is a son of an immigrant, so I would be very careful to say that. I think that's the way he's been painted by the left. However, he's taking a stand against illegal immigration, which, of course, we know has many negative effects on our society, culture, and economy.
And real quick, Ryan, there's no doubt that Hillary Clinton will try to conflate the two.
Right, absolutely. And what we have to sit there and say, what Trump should sit there and say is, what's the 21st century economy like? It's an economy of low-skilled labor? It's not. And Hillary Clinton's plan will make Americans poor, especially the poorest among us. If we care about the gap between the rich and the poor, we should lower legal levels of immigration.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.